150 years ago, from the 12th century to later 13th century, Hangzhou was the capital city of Southern Song Dynasty. At that time, the north part of China was taken by nomads, so Song Dynasty moved its capital from the north to Hangzhou, and they really loved this city. There was a poem said, "Beyond mountains, more green mountains, beyond towers, more towers." When will the singing and the dancing around the West Lake ever cease? The warm breeze intoxicates travelers who mistaken Hangzhou for Bianzhou. Bianzhou was the capital city of Song Dynasty in the north. So at that time, Hangzhou was already a very beautiful and bustling city. The elites really enjoyed their life here, so they lost their will to fight to take their lost territory back. West Lake is a top tourist attraction in Hangzhou. It's popular not just because it's very beautiful, also because the rich history in this area. One of four legendary beauties in ancient China, Xixi, was drowned here. 2,500 years ago, this area was a kingdom, Yue. Yue lost a war to its neighbor in the north, Wu. Yue's king, Goujian, surrendered and was enslaved in Wu's capital for 3 years. During these 3 years, Goujian did everything he could to win Wu's king, Fu Chai's trust. Once Fu Chai was sick, Goujian even tasted Fu Chai's feces and then claimed Fu Chai would recover very soon. Fu Chai did recover. He was very pleased with Goujian's loyalty and let him go back to Yue. Once back home, Goujian began to plan his revenge. First, he found himself two advisors, Fan Li and his best friend Wen Zhong. He then sent Fan Li to find him the most beautiful girl in his kingdom. Fan Li searched the whole country and finally found a girl in a small village. This was Xixi. He took Xixi back to Goujian's palace and trained her for 3 years. He taught her music, painting, chess, and everything she needed to know. During these 3 years, Goujian treated Xixi with great respect. He and his wife acted as if they were Xixi's servants. His wife prepared Xixi food every day herself. 3 years later, when Xixi was ready, they presented her to Wu's king Fu Chai as a tribute. Fu Chai was captivated by Xixi's beauty and married her. Xixi's mission was simple: distract Fu Chai so he had no time to reign, spend his wealth as much as possible. She did what she was supposed to do. Several years later, Wu was weak. Goujian took advantage of this opportunity, attacked Wu and defeated it on the battlefield. Wu's king Fu Chai offered to surrender, but was refused. He had to take his own life. His kingdom was annexed by Goujian's Yue. After victory, Goujian's advisor Fan Li retired. He also suggested his friend Wen Zhong to retire too, but Wen Zhong refused. He believed after so many years of hard work, the king would reward him. But instead, he was convicted of treason and was executed. So why did Goujian do that? He not just killed Wen Zhong, he also drowned Xixi in West Lake. Xixi and Wen Zhong had been with Goujian during his darkest time. After his victory, he did not want them to be around to reminding him and others of the humiliation he endured during these years. I want to tell you the story of one of the richest Chinese in later 19th century. His name was Hu Xueyan. His wealth was equal to half a year's income of Chinese government at that time. So he was very rich, and he made his money all by himself. Hu Xueyuan was born in a very poor family. When he was 12 years old, his father died, so he had to work when he was still a young boy. He worked as an apprentice in some small business for several years before he finally got a job in a private bank. At that time, he met a young man of his own age, Wang Youling. Wang Youling's father was a government official. Wang himself also took to traditional education and was qualified to work for the government. But his father died when he was still very young, so Wang Youling did not have the money to buy himself a job in the government. At that time, Song Dynasty was very corrupt. Every position in the government had a prize. Hu Xueyuan decided to help his friend, but he himself did not have any money. So he made a bold decision. He gave the bank's money to Wang Youling, and Wang Youling took this money and went to Beijing, and then with the help of his father's friend, he managed to buy a job in the government. To Hu Xueyuan, this is not just about helping friend. This was also a very important investment, the first investment in his life. More than 2,500 years ago, there was a very successful businessman, a legend. His name was Lu Buwei. Lu Buwei once said, the most profitable investment was investment in the government. He himself found a unique investment opportunity. He found a prince from a neighbor country, Qing. At that time, the prince served as a hostage in the capital city of his own country. Lu Buwei first befriended this prince. He gave him money to improve his life. Then he used his money to help this prince to get back to his own country. Then he used his wealth to make him the crown prince of Qing. So when the old king of Qing died, the prince became the king of Qing. And the best part is when the prince was still a hostage, poor and lonely, abandoned by his family, because his mother was not the king's favorite wife. Lu Buwei gave his pregnant girlfriend to this prince. So Lu Buwei's son later became the crown prince of Qing. Of course, the prince himself did not know about this. So when the prince died, the prince Lu Buwei helped died. Lu Buwei's son became the king of Qing and later the first emperor of China. So Hu Xueyuan made a similar investment. Several years later, Wang Youling got promoted to a position in Hangzhou, and he went back to Hangzhou. He found Hu Xueyuan at that time was already fired by the bank and lived in poverty. So first he paid the money back to the bank. Then he gave money to Hu Xueyan to start his own business. Hu Xueyan's business was very successful. He had such a powerful ally in the government, so it's not difficult to make a lot of money. Wang Youling was later promoted to be the governor of Zhejiang province, but then he ran out of good luck. Some rebellion called Taiping Heavenly Kingdom attacked Zhejiang. There were many rebellions at that time in China. This was the biggest one. Its leader claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ. They attacked Zhejiang and took Hangzhou. Wang Youling took his own life. Hu Xueyan was not in Hangzhou at that time. He was buying supply for the government, so he escaped. Several years later, the government retook Hangzhou, and then they sent a new governor, Zuo Zhongtang. Zuo Zhongtang was a politician, but also a general. Hu Xueyan managed to gain his trust. At that time, Qing government lost control of Xinjiang. Some in the government believed that they should just abandon it. But Zuo Zhongtang volunteered to lead an army and take Xinjiang back to Qing government's control. The emperor approved his plan but did not have enough money for him, so he turned to Hu Xueyan. Hu Xueyan borrowed money from foreign banks and then lent it to the government. He borrowed at a market rate, but lent to the government at a much higher rate and earned himself a big fortune. With the money, Zuo Zhongtang won the war and took Xinjiang back to Qing government's control. The emperor was pleased. Zuo Zhongtang recommended Hu Xueyan to the emperor, and the emperor gave him a position in the government. This was very important, because wealth without the protection of power is like a castle built on sand. That was the best time in Hu Xueyan's life. He owned everything. He had money, he had power. He owned banks, drugstores, factories. He traded silk, tea, machine, and weapon. He was extremely rich, so he spent a fortune and built himself a new home. He lived there with 8 wives. This is the front door. This golden plate was awarded by the emperor. On the left-hand side was his garage. He had 2 sedan chairs. In ancient times, these were the most comfortable ways of transportation. This is where his maid used to live. Very small space, barely enough for a bed. This is an ancient telephone. This is where he hid his cash. He didn't expect to live long and enjoy life, but unfortunately, 8 years later, he was bankrupt. He himself made a mistake. Hu Xueyan wanted to monopolize the supply of silk, so he bought a lot of silk and built a big stock. But he failed to reach a deal with foreign buyers, so he had to hold this stock in his own hand. Then he had some liquidity problem because silk was very expensive. His enemy took advantage of this opportunity to attack him. First, they forced Hu Xueyan's business partners to postpone payment to him. Then they spread rumors of his liquidity problem and successfully triggered a bank run. Huxian's banks collapsed first, then his other business. In his early 60s, he was bankrupt. He lost everything. Now I'm in Linyin Temple. This is the biggest temple in Hangzhou, also the most popular temple here. It was built by a monk from India in the 4th century. The ashes of the monk who built this temple was buried under this little tower. This is the oldest, also the biggest temple here. In Song Dynasty, it had over 3,000 monks. It is unbelievable how many resources were spent on Buddhism in ancient time. Buddhas here were all made of precious wood from Southeast Asia. Buddhism was introduced into China about 2,000 years ago, but did not gain popularity until the 5th century. At that time, the north part of China was conquered by nomads, and one nomad king converted to Buddhism. He gave temples and monks many privileges. He gave every monk a piece of land for free, and the monks did not need to pay tax. They were also exempted from civil and military services. Since then, Buddhism began to spread quickly in the north part of China. Because they have so many privileges, there were no downsides to be a monk. Soon, the religion became a burden to the empire because there were just too many monks, and they contributed nothing physical to the empire. They did not pay tax. They did not offer civil or military service, and they consumed a lot of resources. They ate meat, they drank alcohol, and they also have many servants. In the middle of the 5th century, the king of the north was fighting rebellions. He searched a suspicious temple in his capital city. He found weapons. He believed that these monks colluded with rebellion. And he also found some secret chambers in the temple. And the monks confessed they slept with noble women in these secret chambers. The king was furious. He killed all the monks in the temple. He tore down all the temples in the capital city and most of the temples in his territory, and began the first persecution of Buddhism. The king also forced anyone below the age of any monks below the age of 50 to return to a secular life. But this persecution did not last very long. Because several years later, the king was assassinated, and his son was a very sincere Buddhist. So Buddhism recovered quickly after the death of the king. In the later 6th century, there were over 3,000 temples in North China and over 3 million monks. It began to be a big burden for the empire again. So the king at that time complained 1/3 of its revenue was spent on this religion. He later began the second persecution of Buddhism. There were a total 4 large persecutions of Buddhism in ancient China, but it still remains the largest religion. So this is Hangzhou, a very beautiful city with endless stories. Maybe we can continue next time.